Alright guys, how you doing? Welcome back to another video. First video on this channel in a long time actually. I wanted to make a special kind of video on here. Maybe more like these in the future as well, depending on if you guys want to see them. But basically, it's been exactly 1 month since I decided to shift my diet to vegetarianism. I've been talking about it a little bit on Instagram and Twitter. Some of you had some questions for me and I thought, you know what, I'll just address them all in one video. A little bit of an update for myself that I can look back on and see how the month's gone. And also to give you guys my, I don't want to say findings, I'm not on a scientific discovery, but just how I found it basically. So the first thing to talk about is why I decided to change from being a carnivorous creature, a meat-eating mammal, to a non-meat-eating mammal, a herbivore if you will. There's a number of reasons I did this. It's actually been a long time coming. I actually spent a year when I was 14 as a pescatarian, where I decided not to eat meat, but I ate fish. That's what a pescatarian is as opposed to a vegetarian. I decided to do that at 14 for moral reasons. I decided that I didn't think it was right that we ate animals. Obviously, that only lasted a year, and then I went back to eating meat. But I did do that, and I was eating mainly tuna and peanut butter sandwiches basically for a year, which at 14 is pretty decent. And the years passed. When I got to about 18, I discovered like working out and fitness, and I used to be a much more gym heavy guy than I am now. I used to weigh a lot more, I used to work out a lot more, and I weighed a lot more because I ate a lot more, and a lot of that was meat because I decided I wanted protein in my diet to increase my muscle mass ultimately, which worked, and that's not so much of a priority for me these days. But at that point in time, which is like 12 years ago now, 13 years ago actually, 18, from then on, for many years, meat became a big part of my diet because I liked it, I liked the taste, but also I was always very aware of how much protein I was consuming. Fast forward to now, why has it changed? Well, the catalyst for me actually going vegetarian was watching a documentary on Netflix called The Game Changers, which I can make a whole video just about that documentary on its own, to be honest. There's so many talking points from it. And shifting to a non-meat based diet is something I've been thinking about for a long time. About 6 or 7 months ago, I stopped eating red meat. So I stopped eating steak, anything beef related, lamb, pork, any of that. I cut it out. So I'd already started to sort of slowly transition to non-meat eating. But watching the documentary is what changed me completely. It's a really good documentary. It's mostly about veganism as opposed to vegetarianism, but it's produced by the likes of James Cameron, who is the director of Titanic and Avatar, Lewis Hamilton, who is a vegan athlete, obviously F1 driver, Arnold Schwarzenegger was involved, many other people as well. And essentially it's trying to tell you that you can still have a non-meat diet and perform at the very highest level of athletic standards. The strongest man in the world, or one of the world records for lifting the heaviest weight, is a vegan. So it dispels a lot of myths about you having to eat meat or animal-based products to be as strong as someone that doesn't. I kind of believed that already, but what this really did was make me realise I don't need meat in my diet as someone who's not trying to operate at the highest level of athletic standards. I'm just trying to live a healthy life. And it was something I always wanted to do. While we're on the Game Changer documentary, it's important to stress a few things. If I was to criticise it in any way, I'd say that these are high-level athletes with unlimited budgets. You've got people like the Tennessee Titans, the NFL team, who a lot of those guys shift to vegan diets and they have one of their best years ever. And it's using that as obviously a great example of vegan eating. But at the same time, these guys have got the best caterers and the best options available. The man on the street doesn't have that. But perhaps the biggest, I don't want to say misnomer, but potential way you could be influenced the wrong way from this documentary is actually thinking that you could shift from a low-carb, high-meat diet to a vegan or vegetarian diet and everything would continue the same. You have to take certain things into consideration. Namely, for me, is carbohydrates, right? I was eating meat before this documentary, mostly lean meat like chicken, turkey, good for you, not much fat, and I was eating very low amount of carbohydrates. That was a health conscious decision to keep my body fat percentage low and try and live that healthy lifestyle. When I shifted to being a vegetarian, instantly like that, I suddenly started eating so many more carbohydrates because you have to. You do have to. If you're going to get the nutrients you need, if you're going to get the protein you need, a lot of that stuff comes in different nutritional makeup to the likes of chicken, which say per 100 grams you get about 20 grams of protein and no carbs. A lot of vegetarian options, if you want 20 grams of protein, you're going to be consuming carbs as well. So what did that change in diet do? I'll tell you one thing it did straight away, which is it made me fart loads, right? This might not be what you thought you were going to hear in this video, but the first thing I noticed when I shifted to vegetarian is for about a week or two, I was farting like a trooper, and they were smelly. But that's because I was eating more carbs than ever before, or certainly for a long time, and I was eating a lot more fibre than I had in a long time, and my body was adjusting to that. I'm happy to say a month in, the farting has reduced. But yeah, on the Game Changers doc, I think it's a little bit misleading to watch that and then think, oh, I can go vegan and I'll be super fit like every other athlete. These guys, like the MMA fighter in it, These guys are burning so many calories every single day. You can eat what you want if you're working out as much as these guys are. One thing I've done is actually upped my exercise since I went to vegetarianism, because I was aware how many more carbs I was eating. And you very rarely see a fat vegetarian. Like, think about people in your life, if they're vegetarian or vegan. It's quite rare that they're not in decent shape. They might not be bulky, they might not be like big gym lads, but they're very unlikely to be carrying a lot of weight. However, I was worried I was going to start putting on weight at first, just because the sheer amount of carbs I was consuming. So I've been balancing that with a little bit more exercise than I was doing before. Not a crazy amount, no more than I want to do. I enjoy it. So, I'm playing football a couple times a week. If not, I'm going on the exercise bike or having a run or whatever a few times in the gym. That's all I do. Not as much as the athletes, but probably more than I would need to do if I was eating a lower carb diet. But if we're looking at more of the kind of practical implications that being a vegetarian has had on my life in the month that I've done it so far, I'll give you some examples. I was in Romania recently for work. Romania, even more so than, say, England, is very meat heavy in their dietary options. And the first day I was on a studio shoot for a FIFA event, and they have the catering there. And the first day there was literally no vegetarian options. There was one thing I could eat on the menu, and that was potato wedges. And there was like 5 or 6 different meats. And straight away, as soon as you are one of them, you start to see some of the reasons that vegetarians and whatnot might complain about things like that. And I did complain because I didn't think it was right. And I've got vegetarians that have been vegetarians for a long time that I work with, and suddenly, I'm seeing things from their side of things. And let's be honest, even if you do eat meat, most diets, when it comes to like catering options, they should be like 70-80% vegetables. And then you can have meat that you can add to it. It shouldn't be like all meat and some vegetables. Because everyone needs vegetables, but not everyone eats meat. Anyway, I'm happy to say after the first day and after a bit of a complaint from me, they massively improved the vegetarian options. However, there still wasn't loads, and I did slide a little bit. On one day I had some salmon, so I ate some fish. And to be honest, that might be something that I do going forward. I'm not going to call myself a pescatarian. I'm not buying fish in the supermarket. But if I'm out and about, and if I'm in a restaurant, and there's no good vegetarian option, I might allow myself to eat fish. It doesn't actually make any logical sense to be if you're doing it for moral and ethical reasons, or even environmental reasons, it doesn't actually make sense to go, I'll eat the fish because, they just live in the ocean. They're not on land like me. If you're going to not eat animals, you shouldn't eat fish either. So that's what I'm trying to do. But it's just like a little tool I could use every now and then to allow me to transition to vegetarian long term and stay vegetarian, which is my ambition now. So yeah, I did have some salmon in Romania, so I cheated once that day. And I also had some tuna that I'd bought from pre-vegetarian era Spencer that I ate, because it was just sitting in my cupboard and I'd already bought it. So they're the kind of only times in the month that I have I've gone away from this new lifestyle. But it does change your perspective, and I'll be honest, this isn't meant to be judgmental, and I've certainly got no issues with people that do continue to eat meat. But the minute you do change to being a vegetarian and you make that shift in your head, you start to see the world differently. It's crazy, like just driving past fast food outlets, for example, where you're getting all the hot chicken and stuff, which before, I would never eat the dodgy stuff, the stuff that didn't look good, but I was a sucker for that sort of thing. I love chicken, I loved all that food. But you go past them now, and you just look at them, and they look different to me. I don't know if people watching this can relate to this, if they're vegetarians, for example, but I'd look at them and I'd think, these guys just buy loads of dead animals and just cook them, and it's like this crazy thing that my mind now sees a different way. And like, you're so much more aware of how much meat people eat, like humans eat. When you see people doing it, when you see them making their orders at restaurants and stuff, you see the restaurant menu, you're so much more aware of it. And it, once you've made that shift, it's really hard to unsee it. And also, I look at a plate of food different. I had this challenge before when I went to a low carb diet for the first time. It's like you have to reprogram your brain, because I don't know about you guys watching, but growing up, like a meal wasn't a meal if it didn't have some meat, some carbs, some vegetables. If you had some chicken, you want some potatoes or some rice or some pasta. And when you take the carbs away from it, as I did many years ago, not completely, but I massively reduced my carb intake, the plate just looked weird to me for many years. It was like, well, there's something missing here. There's just meat. But that is an educational thing you have to do. There's no actual need for a lot of that food you think you need. You don't actually need it to survive and thrive. But you have to train your brain to think differently. And likewise, as I've gone to vegetarian, I have to retrain my brain to look at a plate differently, to not see meat and be okay with that. One way you can do that, which I know some people have got different opinions on, is you can buy these meat substitutes. Obviously, Quorn is a famous one, but there's lots of others. There's plant-based meat foods like chicken goujons that aren't really chicken, meatballs that haven't got meat. I've been buying a few of these. I've liked some more than others. Linda McCartney's quite a good brand for things like vegetarian sausages. I've had some shredded duck that isn't duck, that's from the Linda McCartney range. One brand that I do want to shout out, this isn't sponsored in any way, I haven't been vegetarian long enough to set up those sort of links, is this brand I found called Viv Era. This is some chicken tenders I just got out of the fridge. They're plant-based chicken tenders, but I've bought like 4 or 5 different products from Vivera, and I have to say they taste amazing, and they taste not always exactly like the thing they're pretending to be, but mentally it completely helps when you've got it on the plate in front of you and you've got something that looks like chicken tenders or looks like, meatballs or whatever. And yeah, it tastes just like a meal used to taste. I don't necessarily want to be eating things like this forever, but right now they're really useful for me. So shout out to these guys. Good brand. I get them from Sainsbury's, but yeah, if you want to check them out, check them out. But I guess some of the main questions I've had is like, do I feel different? Have I got more energy, less energy? Is it better than the other? My honest advice on that is I actually don't think it makes a difference. I think you can live very healthily with meat, eating the right meats, of course, and you can live very healthily and have the same performance levels or whatever it is you're looking for without meat as well. I am doing this purely for environmental and ethical reasons. I've decided that I've had enough of eating meat, and I don't think that it's right. And I think if everyone had to see the way our meat was prepared, no one would eat meat. The way that the animals are killed and stuff. It's, my granddad stopped eating meat many years ago when he went to an abattoir and saw the way some of the animals are treated. So I think if everyone saw that, they'd stop. But also, you've got to talk about the environmental factors as well. You should check out the Game Changer doc if you haven't seen it. There's lots of other things as well, like Cowspiracy on Netflix. It talks about how the agricultural farming, particularly cow farming, is one of the main contributors to global warming. Apparently, I don't want to get this stat wrong, but it's mentioned in the Game Changers doc, but the farming of animals is contributing more than all the transport pollution combined to global warming. So all the planes, trains and automobiles, all that stuff, all the carbon emissions is not doing as much damage to the environment as what the farming of cows is. And there's a load of reasons for that. The methane that they let out and the amount of cows, for example, there are in the world. Not only that, but each individual meat-eating person, is the food they eat needs 1 million litres a year to produce. That's not water that you personally consume, that's the water that's needed to make the meat you consume. So there's a lot of water shortages and stuff like that as well. So there's loads of facts which I'm not an expert on, but I know enough about now to decide I'm opting out of that and I'm not going to eat meat. Right guys, I've had to pick up the video here because for some reason the last clip didn't work. But to sum up, 1 month into vegetarianism, I'm feeling good. I think that if you don't know what way to go, because there's lots of conflicting information on something, like there is with meat eaters versus vegetarianism and veganism, similar to what there has been on Brexit, if we're going political with it, when there's people telling you one thing and people telling you another, and you don't know who to trust because you're not an expert and the information is not out there. If you don't know what to go, just go with what your heart tells you. If you've got a moral reason for doing something, an ethical reason, if that's you and you're thinking about giving up meat, for me, that's what I did. I said, there's all this conflicting information out there. I personally believe that the killing of animals and the farming of animals and the unethical treatment of animals just for financial gain that a lot of these industries are doing, I believe that is wrong. So if there's information out there that tells me I can probably live a good life either way, I'll just go with the one that feels right. I'm not saying that there's not more information still to come that's going to disprove certain theories. I'm not an expert at all, but I know my body and I know it feels fine being a vegetarian, so I'm going to keep doing it. Drop a like on this video if you've enjoyed it. If you've got any questions for me about this stuff, I'll try and answer them in the comments below. Subscribe for more videos on the Spencer Owen channel. Until next time, don't go changing.